Did you always know that you were going to be an entrepreneur?
Good grief, no. I mean, what is an entrepreneur? It's quite interesting. Very, very quickly, I started my working career, like most people, drifting into the first job that would have me, and that was working at dear old NatWest Bank when I was 18. Because I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I'm pretty certain most people don't really know what they want to do. For example, my kids are 18 and 20, and they're saying, Dad, I don't really know what I'm going to do. I said, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter, kids, because in 5 years' time you won't be doing it, and in 10 years' time there'll be jobs around that don't exist. So I suddenly realised after 4 years, people used to say to me, oh, it gets better, it gets better. Then what I realised was, no, what you mean is that you get used to it. So I immediately resigned that day and went off to work in the south of France on a campsite, hosing the loos and mowing the grass. And then I saw this guy renting out caravans at the same price, and they were wrecks basically. He was renting them out the same amount of money as I was earning at NatWest Bank per week, and he had 3 of them. And I thought, well, I can do that. Now, it came from that. All I was interested in doing was making a few quid. And I was also selling melons on the beach when everybody else was selling donuts, but melons were far more profitable. So therefore, is that entrepreneurship, or is that making enough money to have a few beers? It's a bit more serious now.
Fantastic. So what made you set up your first sort of business, your first company?
I wanted to eat.
Seems like a very good reason.
Absolutely.
Fantastic. And did you have any mentors, or what inspired you along the way?
No mentors really, just a series of people I met, and a lot of this is just subconscious, and sometimes the idea doesn't come immediately. For example, I was seeing these guys selling sticky donuts on the beach, where there's a big supplier selling loads of kind of people who are just kind of bumming around basically. Now you're lying on the beach in 25, 30 degrees of heat, and what you're really looking for is a sticky apple donut. No, it's not. You get a melon, you slice it into 6, you buy it for 10 francs a pound, slice in 6, sell it for 10 francs each, wrapped in cling film on a nice bed of ice with little lemons around it, wrapped up in nice foil. It looks the part. And I was dressed nicely for me, and going around there. So it was really, really good way of doing it, and that leads on to another thing. Because subconsciously you look at something, well, why would you want that? Why? You think about what you want all the time. It's a simple question, and most things in life are very, very simple, as long as you can distill it and distill the rubbish out of the way.
Fantastic. And if you were to go back and advise your younger self, what would you say?
In what way? To go in the travel industry now?
If you could travel back in time and advise yourself when you were just starting out, what advice would you give to yourself?
Very, very broad question, that is. You have to learn as you go along. Quite often you take a lesson from every setback. That's a classic thing. And I remember a few years later I was renting out tents and caravans, and I kind of, one thing morphed into another, into doing coach tours as interest rates changed and the elderly population had more and more money, and people who were having mortgages didn't. That was kind of mid-80s, and that greying of the population really kicked off in a big way then, and has continued ever since. The biggest lesson I would take is that don't get downhearted. I didn't actually take that advice myself. I was bashing away on the floor sometimes when things didn't go right, and snapping pencils in half and throwing them at the wall. But then sleep on it, and next morning it doesn't seem nearly as bad, because as the day goes on you get more and more noise that kind of comes in, and it changes your judgment. You see things very, very simply when you wake in the morning, but not everyone's the same. People are massively different, and what's right for me wouldn't be right for other people.
Yeah, absolutely. And what are you most proud of?
My wife and kids.
That's a nice answer. That's a very nice answer. And just
Another thing on that,
yeah.
one other thing, one of the greatest things, and I said this a few years ago, one of the greatest things that I really, really found massively great was finding misfits, because we're all misfits. None of us are square pegs and fitting in square holes. Sorry, round, opposite way around, see, I don't even get it right. It's finding these misfits and finding out what people are good at and giving them those things that they are good at to do, and they grow in stature, and they become self-confident, and you get them when people are very, very young, and they become into amazing people, confident in doing what they're doing and making a real difference. And that's what people really work for, in my opinion.
Great. Just finally, what do you think is the value of networking groups like E2E?
Sometimes, quite often, when you talk to people, you're not exactly talking to them. You're using them as sounding boards. You're actually talking to yourself. And this is not necessarily, this is just life in general. And somebody will say something and it makes you realise the next step, a thought you've been incubating in your brain for several time periods, be it days, hours, months, even years. And suddenly you think, I can then use that idea. And that's the biggest thing.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks very much.
Thank you.